Good morning, App Properties. It's Thursday, May 28th. We are excited to be back with you. I'm Amy Corr, and I'm joined by Kevin Van Eck, who's live out of the Goose Island office. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Amy. Good to see you. Hope everyone has their coffee. Today, as we have been doing on Thursdays, we're going to answer your questions. So this was the last week of Do It Now, the fourth week. And as we wrap it up, we're going to take a look at the last 7 to 14 days of questions we've received. But there was something that came out yesterday that's going to be very impactful as we talk about reopening in Illinois and what we can do as brokers, right, Amy?
Yeah, so one of the big questions that we've been fielding, yesterday as the DCEO, which is the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, released a statement about phase 3 reopening and specifically talking about what that looks like for real estate and, for what we're doing day to day. And the good news is they talked about the fact that they are going to allow open houses and they are going to allow some level of showing tenant occupied properties. Now, the important thing to note is most of you probably got an email from IAR, the Illinois Association of Realtors, giving you some of that information. But what we're waiting on is IDFPR. We want to make sure that we get concrete information on the guidelines related to open houses and showing tenant occupied properties. The important thing is we still need to remember that we're going to have to operate safely. It's exciting news that it's going to allow us to get a little bit closer to normal and back to work, but please know that we are at the pulse and we're really wanting to make sure that as soon as we get the right and accurate information, we're going to communicate with all of you so that we have a game plan as a company so that you all feel comfortable being able to get back to business and, working open houses and being able to get into tenant occupied properties safely. So stay tuned, more to follow, and we'll be sure to let you know as soon as we've got more information.
Yeah, that's great, Amy, right? Because now from a business development perspective, if we can host open houses safely and from our investors or tenant, being able to show tenant occupied properties would be great. But let's wait and see what IDFPR says and how to do it. And just to reaffirm what Amy said is we're going to be putting out the information that you need. So don't worry, you won't miss it. We're going to be putting it everywhere. You're going to receive emails from everybody, quite literally, about how to go about doing this safely. So let's get right into the questions. One of the questions we got was, and this is one that it's great because we all come at things sometimes with a degree of skepticism. And the question was about the 32X plan that we talked about yesterday. And the question was specifically, if I do the 32X plan, how do I know it will work? Well, I think the immediate question is, you don't know. You kind of have to have faith other than looking at examples. Here's the thing. We know that real estate is based on relationships. We know that real estate and the reason that consumers choose who they are going to work with or choose the product or service that they're going to choose is based upon who's in front of them, who they feel connected with, who they have an emotional relationship with. We know that. So 32X makes sense from a common sense perspective, from a rationale of just understanding how consumers work. But we also know when we look at history and we look at examples of top producers, this is what they do. There is no other reason that top producers would have such huge marketing budgets to really pump this up in terms of the automated postcards, in terms of making sure that people are in the CRM getting the email, in terms of sending out cap gifts and the bonus things we talked about, having AdWorks, and then all of the personal outreach. We know it works because we have specific examples to point to, so it's predictable. And one of the things that is scary is sometimes we want to come up with our own ideas, right? We want to be unique. We want to not follow the path because there's all this, noise about being cheap or whatever it is. But I'll tell you, once you leave that path, it's no longer predictable. And when you start to come up with your own ideas, which are good in certain cases, like creating extreme experiences, it's not so good sometimes in business development because you're veering from what we understand about how the consumer chooses. And so the examples we have also show us that leaving the path is not a road to success. Right, Ann?
Right, Kev, absolutely. And, I think the thing too, and Kevin and I were just talking about it a little bit earlier, because I'm one that tends to do this. It's like when you decide that you're going to do something, it's like when I decide I'm going to get organized. I buy this really fancy organizer to, lay everything out. And I focus on the idea of getting organized instead of just getting organized. So the thing with this 32 touch plan is it's already laid out for you. The organization is already there. So, sometimes it's just a matter of just doing it. The biggest roadblock is the planning or the thinking about I'm going to do something. Just do it. It works. It's proven. People have done it time and time again. And so, the best thing is we've laid it out for you to make it really simple. So just get it into your calendar, wake up in the morning and just start executing, and you're going to see results. Because I'm a big believer, if you don't throw anything out into the universe, it has nothing to react to. But if you throw something out into the universe, it's got to react. So, reaching out and touching, your sphere 32 times is going to force some kind of a reaction. So just do it. Don't overthink it, and trust us. You will see some type of results, and you just got to stick with it. So one of the other questions that we received was in relation to buyers and, kind of COVID-19 and what we've been seeing in regards to technology. And specifically, the question was, now that some buyers have become more comfortable with virtual interaction, they were worried. This particular person who wrote in said they were worried about our industry and our role, as being real estate brokers. And does our role get smaller now that technology has obviously shown evidence that it can be impactful? And I've got to be honest, I actually think that this has been a great test for us. And I actually have really been excited that as an industry, we've been able to embrace technology. We should be looking at technology as our friend. It should be something that we are aligning with to make our job more efficient and more effective. But there is still an aspect of our job and what we do that I don't believe technology will ever be able to replace. And when it comes to buyers, Kevin and I were talking about this earlier. You are always going to have those buyers who want a discount broker or going to want to do it themselves using technology. But that is really such a small percentage when you really look at it. We were talking about the fact that most people, even if they use technology at the very beginning of their search, and they might go on to Zillow or to Redfin or to Trulia and do some of their own analytics to start with, at some point, most consumers want an expert to help guide them through the process. We still have to recognize this is their biggest investment. This is their biggest purchase. And I just don't think anyone at this point is truly comfortable letting it be led 100% by technology. And, the other thing that Kevin and I were talking about, earlier was the idea that there are these nuances in real estate that technology cannot pick up on. I actually have this argument with my husband often because he's in technology and is a big believer that technology can replicate and do a lot of, jobs, currently in our environment. And I said, but technology cannot know that when you walk into 3 houses on the same street, that one has a brand new kitchen that just got renovated and renovated perfectly. And so that's why it's worth $50,000 to $75,000. Kevin was saying earlier in an example, there might be a buyer who wants to be close to the train, to transportation. So they might put in some parameters where they want to be close to the blue line. And when they're looking at the results, they're not seeing what they're wanting in regards to a property. But, it's really hard for technology to make them comfortable enough to say to them, hey, maybe you should be thinking about looking on or near the brown line, because there are a lot of great homes that I think would meet your needs, and you're still close to transportation. Those are the types of things that we do. It's our human connection, but it's also our knowledge as brokers that helps people navigate. And so it's a lot of that intake and a lot of that customization that I think we still add extreme value for. But here's what it all comes back down to, and this is just back to the basics of do it now and everything that we always articulate. It isn't a buyer's job to understand what your value is. It is your job to make sure they understand what you're bringing to the table and why they should work with you. Thad about a year ago at a meeting had said, if I asked you what your job description is and you say to me, my job is to help somebody find a house, he says that's wrong, because right now they can locate the physical houses. They can find those on Trulia and Zillow. What our job is the remaining 95%. They might identify what they think they like. It's our job to make sure that they're getting what they really need and then navigating them through the rest of the process. So think about that. I'm a big believer that right now also people are embracing human interaction. We've all been sitting at home. We've all had to use technology. You know, as much as Zoom is cool, I can't wait to be able to actually sit around a fire pit with friends of mine or go somewhere where I can interact live. And I think that is bringing that out with everyone. So I actually think this is going to pivot our industry a little bit more. I think we're going to be able to use technology to be efficient, but I think people are going to recognize the significance and the importance of still being able to navigate with a trusted advisor. So I would say, take a look at your own value proposition, work with those relationships, because what we've been seeing over the last 8 weeks is that relationship is what is creating momentum for so many agents out there, because I do not think technology is going to replace us anytime soon.
Yeah, great points. I can't wait till we can be in the same room, and the connection, you know, on this show with Coffee and with Amy and Kevin, where we're not doing it over Zoom, right? So great points, because I think everyone's craving connection. We're seeing that everywhere with the states that have reopened and people wanting to be together, and unfortunately sometimes, you know, unsafely in some cases, but everyone craving that. So as long as we're focused on relationships, like Amy said, you know, regardless, whether you're fearful or not, the bottom line is foster those relationships, business development, focus on the people around you. So one of the next questions we got was about the extreme experiences that we talked about last week. And the actual question was, I still don't get the extreme experiences idea. What does that mean? So I'm going to try and relate it. I'm just going to try and talk about really, really simply. And so think about it from a consumer perspective, and you being the consumer. When is the last time that you have recommended Chili's, Outback, recommended that someone drink Coca-Cola, recommended that? Why? Those things, probably not. And the reason why not is those are ordinary things. They're ordinary. There's no different, they're just ordinary things. So people don't recommend ordinary things. That's number one. Number two is, you know, when is the last time that someone has told you about their dentist? When is the last time that someone has told you about the person that came and repaired their AC? It's pretty few and far between. And the reason being is that people don't talk to other people about experiences when their expectations are met. What do I mean by that? It's the airline example I used last week, where if a plane takes you from point A to point B, you get there safely, you get off the plane, they did their job. Do you talk about it? Was it an awesome experience? I just had the best flight on American. No, because it met expectations. You had to get there, you got there. And so it's the same with real estate in both of those scenarios. Think about your business, think about what you do, and is working with you ordinary? And is working with you unique? Is it an experience that exceeds expectations beyond what they thought it was going to be? And if the answer is no, then we got to figure out how to do it. So that's where the extreme client experiences come in. Now, what are specific things? It could be as basic as over-communicating. It could be as basic as being available and super responsive. And one of the things that does in creating that extreme client experience is it gives them security, right? We always talk about how big this transaction is, how they only do it every 7 to 10 years and all this. Yes, people, it's a high-stress event. And the more communicative you are, the more it puts them at ease, the more secure they feel in the transaction, the more secure they feel in working with you. And that is an experience that they didn't expect necessarily. They expected it to be stressful. Then take that another step into learning about what and how you can make that a client experience that goes above and beyond. And this, you know, this can range. Last week we had Jake on Thursday, and he talked with us about how he met with a client. He picked up a case of beer and went over there and had a conversation and sat down and had a couple of drinks. And that was an extreme client experience for that client. That was something unique. Jake went, he listened, he asked questions, and he brought over exactly what he knew that would make a connection between him and that client. You can also take it a step further, like we talked about with the black cars and all of this, but remember, it doesn't cost a lot of money to create extreme client experiences. You can go above and beyond if that's what it's going to take to create that experience for the client, but it doesn't need to be something like that. And I will tell you, all the stories that Amy and I get, we should put these all in a book, truly, because all of the success stories that we see about what everybody is doing, you know, Allie Ballard taking eggs and delivering those to the families. There's so many great things that we've heard that where you are creating extreme client experiences right now. And so that's what's really exciting for us. And again, I want to stress, it doesn't need to cost a lot of money, and it can range. Really, it comes down to how you can create an extreme client experience personally for that specific client.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. And it really is about taking a step back, Kevin. And I think thinking about what would make them feel good. Because ultimately, that's what it is. It's where they feel cared for, or they feel like, wow, that was something that really that I felt like they really connected or understood who I was. So sometimes it's just the exercise of, listening, which is really difficult for us to do as agents. But listening is really what's going to allow you to create these extreme experiences. And it will change. It will truly shift your business if you start thinking of it from that point of view. So one of the last questions that we're going to talk about, and I think it's a really good one because we got this a lot, which is I feel like I still have so much to work on, and kind of where do I start? I think the idea was there was a lot that came at us with Do It Now. We had 4 really full packed weeks with great information. And the beauty of it is we videoed everything. So even if, you didn't get a chance to really look at much for week 1 or week 2, that's okay. You have the opportunity to go back and really kind of follow along with everything. But if, you're asking kind of where do I start? We laid this out very methodically. We really kind of thought about, your business. And, you kind of have to begin at the beginning. And that very first component in the very first week, we talked about business development. And that is really cultivating leads or finding prospects. Because the reality of it is, if you're looking at, maybe week 3 and looking at servicing your clients, well, it's really important to hone in on how good you do that and how well you do that and whether or not you should be tweaking some things. But ultimately, if you don't have any clients in your pipeline to even service, then that's an issue. So what I would tell all of you is you have the luxury and the ability to take this at your own pace. This is essentially an on-demand program at this point, but I would begin at the beginning. I would really take a look at my client development and say, do I have a really good handle on how I'm cultivating business and how I'm filling my pipeline? Because if you get a handle on that and feel really comfortable, it's going to be natural to then go to the second step, which is now that I'm really good at being able to cultivate business and actually get people to talk to, now I've got to focus on getting confident enough to get them to work with me, to actually get their business. And then from there, obviously, once you get them to yes, then you have to look at the component of how am I going to create that extreme client experience and just service them really well. Because then this fourth component for this week is really putting them on a maintenance mode. You've just done a great job for them, and now you're maintaining that relationship, but it kind of takes you back to the beginning, which is, again, developing that business and cultivating that pipeline. The more that you're efficient in this cycle, the easier each component is going to be. But, here's what I'd also like to say. It's kind of like when you start a diet, or you decide that you're going to start on a new exercise routine. The hardest part is getting started. It is sort of that extra momentum to actually push yourself to decide to get up in the morning and go and do that workout instead of sleeping in. It's actually deciding I'm not going to eat that donut, right? Because I need to get started. The first couple of days are always the hardest, but I really encourage you to push yourself to do it, because once you get started, it gets easier. It's kind of like starting a car, right? The hardest part is, getting it turned on. But once you kind of have the engine going, as long as you maintain it and continue to fill it with gas, it's going to keep moving forward. Same thing with you. So, it's make yourself push to get started, and then just make reasonable expectations and don't overdo it. Just don't bite off more than you can chew, and underestimate yourself maybe at the beginning. Maybe just pick one thing that you're going to do a day. And once you've started accomplishing that, that's a baseline. Then you can add to that baseline. And now maybe you're comfortable doing 2 things a day. But I would just be realistic with the expectations you set for yourself, but just do something. Again, I'm such a big believer of if you change one thing, if you do one thing differently, it is going to change your trajectory. So even if you pick one thing out of all of this and it's a slight shift in your business, you are going to see different results. But I would just say begin at the beginning and just pick something. Don't overwhelm yourself, and don't set yourself up to feel like you're not going to be able to accomplish it, because any little thing you do is going to create some sort of shift in your business opportunity.
Such good advice. I was really hoping that you would say Peloton somewhere in there where you were talking about exercise routines.
It was so hard, but I was like, I am just going to say exercise routine because not everybody wants to hear about the Peloton.
Oh, now everyone can take a drink of their coffee if you're playing the drinking game with us. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hopefully this answered some of your questions that you had. Hopefully you shared these questions, and this was helpful for you. A couple of things. Tomorrow we're going to be back for coffee again for the Do It Now wrap-up. But before we get there, I still want to ask, if you have any feedback at all, anything you want to share about the Do It Now program, success stories, thoughts, what you've been working on, what you're struggling with, please send them to coffee@appproperties.com. We'd love to see those and help and really read some of those things in how we can help support you continue to grow. And as Amy was talking about, keep that momentum going. So send that in to coffee@appproperties.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow, and I hope everyone has a great day. Stay tuned for the open house and the tenant-occupied property guidance as well.
Yep, sounds great, Kevin. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.